histopathological changes, what we observe in the duck viral enteritis. So I once again want to emphasize on this point that although the disease is called as duck viral enteritis, it is not a enteric disease, it is a systemic disease. A systemic disease with very prominent enteric lesions. Okay, so histopathology will clear this point. So histopathological first major point is capillary wall degeneration. As we remember, in the cross lesions, what we have seen that the animal suffers from disseminated intravascular coagulopathy. If we look at some other very severe systemic diseases, toxemic diseases, like septicemic diseases, for example, pasteurellosis, okay, or diseases causing severe septicemia and toxemia like colibacillosis, or viral disease, systemic viral disease, pantropic viral disease, like Ranikhet disease, like VVND or HPAI. In all these diseases, we will find that the the blood capillaries supplying the uh, the various tissues and organs are damaged, and consequently almost all body parts, almost all systems will show some or the other lesion. Okay. They definitely have more damage in some areas, less damage in some areas, but almost all parts will show lesions. Okay, like classical swine fever, means in acute classical swine fever, like African swine fever, what we have now here. These are all systemic diseases. No? Even PRRS. Okay. Keeping this in mind, although it is called as duct viral enteritis, you have to remember that it is causing damage all over the body, and one of the important histological lesion or cellular lesion is capillary wall degeneration. And another target of this virus is the lymphoid tissue. Okay, we have seen that. Please try to understand this, that in most cases, when viruses are, I'm talking about virus, not about bacteria. Okay, when viruses are affecting the endothelium, invariably the lymphoid tissue is also affected. Some relation is there, which I am unable to understand this, or maybe someday I will meet someone who can actually explain this to me, or some read an article where I can find out. But there is always that those diseases which are lymphotropic and systemic, which are endotheliotropic, viral diseases with endotheliotropic and systemic, they also affect the lymphoid system. Hmm? And these are very separate, different viruses. Just now I have enlisted few. The VVND is there, classical swine fever in pigs is there, BVDV in acute BVDV in cattle is there, uh, the HPAI is there. So many diseases are there. Okay, so coming back to histopathology, capillary wall degeneration in larger blood vessels, in the, in the larger blood vessels, which are not means before capillaries or after capillaries, when they have the multiple layers, the endothelial lining disruption becomes less compact. The connective tissue of the other layers becomes less compact, with visible separation from where the blood comes out. The endothelium is disrupted, and the other layer connective tissue, say the media, the externa, their their wall connective tissue is damaged, and from there the blood escapes out. This is seen very commonly there. The common site of hemorrhage include interlobular venules of proventriculus, interlobular venules of if you see histology of proventriculus, proventriculus is a gland. actually, or I should say a glandular structure. You will find multiple glands inside the proventriculus. And between the glands are called as lobules. Some parts of glands are called, these aggregations are called as lobules. So blood supplying between the glands, the venules of PVT are one of the worst affected. Hmm. And probably that is the reason for the proventricular hemorrhages. In liver, the hepatic and portal venules at the margins of liver lobules are affected. Hepatic and portal venules at the margins of liver are affected. In lungs, the venules between the lung parabronchi, hmm, venules between the lung parabronchi. If you remember the histology of the avian lung, it is not having the alveoli. The 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 trachea divides into bronchi, then bronchioles, and from bronchioles, uh, I should say, a structure arises called as parabronchus, which is having very little partial disrupted muscular fragments which control its lumen. Hmm? And this parabronchus divides into air capillaries, which can be divided into atria and air capillaries. And these atria are comparable to alveoli. Okay, but it is not so. And from these air capillaries, the air directly goes towards the pneumatic bones and the air sac up to the coelomic cavity, isn't it? It is not like the mammalian lung. So this the blood vessels between the parabronchi, venules between the parabronchi are was affected. The intestine shows capillaries, the damage to the capillaries within the villi, within the villi. And in kidneys, the star-shaped interlobular renal hemorrhages are formed. Hmm? In kidney, the very typical star-shaped interlobular renal hemorrhages are found because the blood vessels there are affected. Interlobular blood vessels are damaged. If you see, proventriculus and intestinal villus endothelium are capillaries are damaged, and that is why intestine shows profuse hemorrhages, and consequently the disease got its name as enteritis, where it is not actually a true enteritis; it is a systemic disease. When the blood vessels are affected, all affected organs will show degeneration, degenerative changes, and necrotic changes. Hmm. The lesions in the digestive tract in the initial stages appear as small hemorrhages in submucosal papillae or folds. In the digestive tract, the lesions appear as small hemorrhages in the submucosal area. This later start merging. This later starts merging, elevating, and consequently the mucosa, hmm, the mucosa gets separated. These small hemorrhages slowly become merged. They elevate and separate the overlaying mucosa. The affected epithelium above the hemorrhage becomes edematous, necrotic, raised into the lumen. The affected epithelium above these merging hemorrhages become edematous, necrotic, and raised into the lumen. Later, its margins separate and forms the elevated plaques. Later, its margins are separated, means before sloughing off, and they form the elevated plaques. In esophagus, necrosis and degeneration of stratified squamous epithelium is seen. Same way in the cloaca also. There is necrosis and degeneration of stratified squamous epithelium in esophagus and cloaca. Uh, the epithelial cells may show eosinophilic, intranuclear, and cytoplasmic also. Intranuclear and cytoplasmic inclusions. Okay, the epithelial cells may show intranuclear and cytoplasmic. That is a peculiar point. Cytoplasmic hemorrhages may also appear sometimes in the epithelial cells. The lymphoid tissue shows capillary and venule hemorrhages. Capillary and venule hemorrhages, and the annular bands and the lymphoid disc, depending on the species, uh, they show the lymphoid degeneration. Lymphoid degeneration. Apart from these hemorrhage, also lymphoid degeneration. The esophagus and proventricular sphincter also rich in lymphoid tissue, that also shows hemorrhages and necrotic changes. That also shows hemorrhagic and necrotic changes. Spleen itself shows hemorrhagic and necrotic changes. Spleen, being a lymphoid organ, shows hemorrhagic and necrotic changes. The lymphocytes of the affected lymphoid tissue show widespread karyorexis and pycnosis. So karyorexis and pycnosis indicate cell death and necrosis. All right. The lymphocytes of the affected lymphoid tissue, whether it is in the esophagus, proventricular sphincter, or spleen, or annular bands in the intestine, or lymphoid disc in the other species like geese. So they all show the hemorrhages, and lymphocytes start showing karyorexis and pycnosis, which is a prominent indicator of the cell death occurring there. Then this lymphocyte debris is removed by the phagocytes. So consequently, number of phagocytes appear more than the normal. The capillary damage in the intestine, leads to formation of infarctions. Leads to formation of the infarction, especially in the lymphoid tissue of intestine. Especially in the lymphoid tissue of the intestine, the infarctions start developing there. The larger blood vessels separate lymphoid tissue from the mucosa, where uh, sorry, I should not say like that. Where the larger blood vessels are affected, the consequent ischemia is severe, or infarcted area, or I should say the ischemic necrotic area is very severe, and at this point, ulceration develops in the because of loss of lymphoid tissue. Okay, where the lymphoid tissue is supplied by larger blood vessel, a large area of ischemia and necrosis forms. This forms into an ulcer hmm, because of exfoliation, and this ulcerated portion is filled with blood with overlaying remaining lymphoid tissue or lost lymphoid tissue. Overlaying remaining lymphoid tissue or lost lymphoid tissue. The prominent necrosis, what we see in these areas is coagulative necrosis. Prominent necrosis, what we see here is coagulative necrosis. And later stages, fibrin comes and pseudomembrane forms in the intestine. Later stages, fibrin is released and pseudomembrane is formed in the area. The exfoliated portion, which is now being exfoliated, or the hemorrhagic portion, starts forming the cast into the lumen of intestine. Cast into the or necrotic cast inside the lumen of intestine. Okay, the exfoliated portion, which is being the necrotic portion, exfoliated portion, pseudomembrane, all when are released into the lumen, they form the cast. They in bursa, the submucosal. You understand this bursal lumen is having bursa inside is a lymphoid tissue. There are follicles, bursal follicles, and follicles are present inside the plicae. Plicae are folds, bursal mucosal folds. Okay, so there is a epithelial lining of bursa, and this epithelial lining is mucosal in nature. Okay, from where the some secretions are also released out. So submucosal and interfollicular capillary hemorrhages develop in the bursa. submucosal and interfollicular capillary hemorrhages develop. There is depletion of lymphocyte in follicles. Depletion of lymphocytes in the follicles. In, and it can be so severe that cavities develop there. It may be so severe that cavities develop in the basal follicles. In two diseases, we see this. In chicken, in IBD, these empty capillaries develop in bursal follicles. And in ducks, in duck viral enteritis, these empty capillaries develop inside the bursa. Okay, if bursa is there, okay, if young bird is affected. In IBD, that is a primary lesion. In duck viral enteritis, this is not a primary lesion. This is a finding in the young birds. The depleted part of bursal follicle where lymphocytes are removed, है ना? Depleted part of lymphoid follicle start showing presence of eosinophilic material with presence of heterophils. Eosinophilic material with presence of heterophils, and sometimes mononuclear cells with intranuclear inclusions, and sometimes mononuclear cells with intranuclear inclusions. Epithelial cells appear hypertrophied, vacuolated, epithelial and vacuolated. The hypertrophied and vacuolated, and they may contain both intranuclear and intracytoplasmic inclusions. Plasmic inclusions. So bursa is of the birds. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Sir,
Okay. Up to what point you could listen to me?
sir, epithelial cells may after that it was.
Okay. The epithelial cells are hypertrophied and vacuolated, especially in the cytoplasm, है ना? Vacuolated in the cytoplasm and contain both intranuclear and intracytoplasmic inclusions. Intranuclear and intracytoplasmic inclusions. The importance here is, although bursa is not showing, is not a primary organ for lesion development or anything, or in the pathogenesis, but it is very important for diagnosis of duck viral enteritis. If you see, we see that intranuclear and intracytoplasmic inclusion in the epithelium, and also some mononuclear cells in follicles. Okay. In thymus, blood is present in the interfollicular spaces, hemorrhages. Hemorrhages in interfollicular hemorrhages. There is presence of coagulative necrosis in the central medullary reticulum and cortical lymphocyte destruction. Cortical lymphocyte destruction. So the major lesions in thymus are hemorrhages, especially interfollicular hemorrhages, coagulative necrosis in the medulla, especially medullary reticulum, and destruction of the lymphocytes in the cortex. Breeder birds show congestion, hemorrhage, and necrosis in oviduct. Congestion, hemorrhage, and necrosis in oviduct, and the ova appear hemorrhagic and misshapen. Ova appears hemorrhagic and misshapen. Overall, ovary will have interstitial hemorrhages. Ovary has interstitial hemorrhages. Uh, the mature drakes, the male of duck is called a drake. Male of ducks is called a drake. So Donald Duck is not a duck. He is actually a Donald Drake. Somehow he is referred as female Donald Duck. So drakes are drakes show interstitial capillary hemorrhages between the seminiferous tubules. Interstitial capillary hemorrhages between the seminiferous tubules. The all parenchymatous organs in all birds, the affected birds, will show necrosis. All parenchymatous organs glandular organs will show hemorrhage and necrosis. Hemorrhage and necrosis all associated with blood vessels and lymphoid tissue. Blood vessels and lymphoid tissue. The, the liver shows hepatocytes becoming detached and dissociated from the cords. Hepatocytes being detached and dissociated from cords, which are swollen, which are swollen, and some hepatocytes uh, appear to have intranuclear inclusion, hmm, intranuclear inclusions with minimum cytoplasm present. Some dead hepatocytes will have minimum cytoplasm and presence of intranuclear inclusions in the remaining nucleus. Hmm. The the dead portion or necrotic portion contains fibrin. Necrotic portion contains fibrin. The similar changes of removal of cells are also are seen in pancreas and kidneys. Pancreas and kidneys. So vaccine is available. Modified live vaccine is also there, and inactivated tissue culture vaccine is also available. It is available in India, and some very good suppliers are present in the Assam region, Guwahati and surrounding tissue. These two diseases, duck viral hepatitis and this duck viral enteritis, duck hepatitis and viral enteritis. These two disease, and of course we have there is duck plague, pasteurellosis, very similar to what we have read. Duck plague. These three diseases have actually single-handedly disrupted the duckery development in India, the duck farming in India. Okay, especially in many regions. So vaccination and biosecurity are very important to prevent these diseases. Very, very important. Biosecurity and vaccination. Okay, although it is good that vaccines are available and they come very handy. Ducks are very resistant. And fourth disease important for ducks is aflatoxicosis. Very, very important. Aflatoxin, ducks are very sensitive to aflatoxin. It's a good business opportunity, but less explored in India. The uh, diagnosis of this disease, is by PCR and real-time PCR and real-time PCR. Real-time PCR is also called as qPCR. Okay. Real-time PCR is not called as RT-PCR, although these days they say RT-PCR for the diagnosis of corona, but that is wrong actually. RT-PCR is reverse transcription PCR. Okay. So what we are doing for corona is QRT-PCR, real-time reverse transcriptase PCR. Okay. So here we have only qPCR. Then agglutination test, latex agglutination test has been found very useful. Virus neutralization test, immunofluorescence test, ELISA. ELISA is very important, especially dot ELISA has been used. Then isolation of the virus is also important in the 1-day-old Muscovy or white Pekin ducklings, white Pekin breed or Muscovy duck. Yeah, 1-day-old duckling can be used for isolation of virus. Then the chorioallantoic membrane inoculation of 9 to 14 days old duck embryos. 9 to 14 days old duck embryos. The good samples for diagnosis and isolation of virus include liver, kidney, pancreas, bursa, and peripheral blood lymphocytes. Liver, kidney, pancreas, bursa, and peripheral blood lymphocytes. Also cloacal swabs, because virus may appear in the debris from the oviduct and the intestines. So we conclude this duck viral enteritis here. Then we will resume back to some remaining portion of the other poultry diseases. Okay. Any doubt in duck viral enteritis? Anywhere you want me to repeat something? Yes.
Sir, the affected epithelium, it shows something like lesions. I missed that part.
Affected epithelium of what? Bursa?
Yes, sir.
The affected epithelium of bursa starts showing inclusion bodies. Presence of inclusion bodies in the affected epithelium of the bursa. The bursa is a good point of time. I said that it is not very good for the I should say the um, pathogenesis, because it is pathogenesis is mostly occurring in the all lymphoid tissue and the endothelial damage, leading to infarctions, ischemic necrosis, and all that. But bursa is very important for diagnosis and even for isolation of virus. In histopathology, we can observe that the bursal cytoplasm, the bursal epithelial cells are hypertrophied with vacuolated cytoplasm. Cytoplasm may show vacuolations, and also intranuclear and intracytoplasmic inclusions. Intranuclear and intracytoplasmic inclusions. All right. Anything else? Yes.
No, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay. So we go to next disease. Now we start with some parasitic diseases. Parasitic diseases. The we discussed the avian malaria. Avian malaria, and etiology is Plasmodium gallinaceum. Plasmodium gallinaceum, Gallinaceum. Plasmodium gallinaceum, Gallinaceum. Plasmodium gallinaceum. It's a rare disease. Okay, it's a rare disease. There are other species like Plasmodium juxtanucleare. Plasmodium juxtanucleare, Juxtanucleare. Juxtanuclear, juxtanuclear, which affects the chicken and turkey. And Plasmodium durare, Durare. Plasmodium durare, Durare, which is parasite of turkey. Parasite of turkey. The vector is Culex. Vectors are Culex and Aedes mosquitoes. Very rarely, Anopheles also spreads it. Culex mosquito, Aedes mosquito, and Anopheles mosquito. Okay. The this the as you know, the malarial parasites, they have a life cycle. Next year, this Plasmodium life cycle will be discussed in very much detail in parasitology. Just basic things I tell you is that the after the bite, the parasite survives in the phagocytic cells around the skin. And when it enters them and divides in them, it is called as schizogony. It is called as Sheizo, schizogony. Schizogony. Schizogony means the multiplication by dividing. Say binary fission like. Okay, multiplication by binary fission. So initially it infects the reticuloendothelial cells or the phagocyte cells. From there, it goes on and attacks the RBC. In RBC, it feeds on the hemoglobin and cytoplasm, and again undergoes schizogony. Okay, and after that, from blood, from there, it starts entering into the spleen, kidney, liver, and other endothelial cells, other organ endothelial cells, and there again it undergoes schizogony. And whenever this parasite is entering some cells, dividing in them, growing in them, and then breaks and comes out, there are numerous parasites released in blood. Whenever you are studying the parasitic diseases, blood parasite disease, although parasitic disease, avian malaria, is a rare disease, and many times we may not find them very pathogenic now. Okay, but there will be some diseases like anaplasma, like trypanosoma, okay, the babesia, or etc., which you are studying in the mammalian parasite. You understand this? They attack the blood or any other tissue, and they increase their number. And when they enter the blood, they are foreign body. They block the capillaries. They initiate the coagulation. They release the poison, hmm, and also the debris from dead cells. Debris from dead cells induce inflammatory changes, anaphylactic changes, and also coagulation changes in the blood. Once again, I'll discuss this thing, that when numerous parasites appear in the blood because of schizophrenia or division, they kill the cell, they they destroy the cell. With the destruction of cell, the debris is released in the blood. This debris can lead to anaphylaxis, coagulation, and with them there is lot of poison, which also causes damage. Huh? Then these parasites, by their sheer number, large number, they can actually block some capillaries. They can block some capillaries, and this leads to death. Whenever there is heavy parasitemia, when there is high parasitic load, there is death of the animal, affected animal. Hmm? Okay. Now, after few, if the bird survives, then after few cycles of schizogony, they start forming gametes. They start forming gametes, and when the mosquito feeds on an infected birds, it catches the infection in itself and spreads to other birds. It starts going into the gametogony, gametogony, forming gametes, and these gametes form the zygotes. And this during this gametogony, it is picked up by the mosquitoes, which spread to other birds. Although now this disease is very rare. Now this disease is very rare, rarely seen in the field. Now, depending on the condition of the bird, uh, means the immune status of this bird. hmm, the the infection may go symptomless without any uh, clinical signs. The infection may remain in the bird and can be self-limiting, or if it goes on for long period, then anemia starts appearing. The bird gets anemic. There is pale comb and pale comb and wattle, and the bird becomes anemic. Hmm? If during heavy parasitemia, the parasite enters the brain capillaries, then nervous signs may appear. Nervous signs may start appearing. The if we see pathological changes, the anemia, the anemia may result into many other clinical signs of lethargy and anorexia and general body hypoxia. In severe cases, when the birds are susceptible, parasite is virulent, then there may be up to 90% mortality. 90% mortality. And if the vital organs are affected, like brain, liver, heart, they are affected, then mortality becomes very high. The in some cases, because of excessive destruction of RBC, prehepatic jaundice may take place. All right. So that is hemolytic jaundice may appear. So grossly, the dead bird carcass is anemic or icteric. There is severe splenomegaly because of excessive destruction of RBC. The spleen phagocytic system becomes hyperplastic. So spleen is enlarged. spleen is enlarged and may show presence of hemosiderin. May show presence of hemosiderin in that. The spleen is enlarged, kidney is swollen, and liver may also show some necrotic foci. Liver may show necrotic foci. Diagnosis, the major diagnostic point is during its development inside the RBC, the parasite forms a typical structure. Inside the RBC, parasite forms a typical structure. The parasitic cell has got a large vacuole inside it. The parasitic cell has got a large vacuole inside it, and this vacuole pushes the nucleus to one side. The vacuole pushes the nucleus to one side, and that is why this vacuole and a small dark round nucleus, vacuole and small dark round nucleus, they appear like ring. They appear like ring. Okay. So that is called as a trophozoite. Trophozoite, and that stage is called as trophozoite. So the diagnostic point, very important. This question is asked that the demonstration of erythrocytic ring form of trophozoite, erythrocytic ring form of trophozoite by Romanowski staining is important diagnostic point or diagnostic method in the live birds. Okay, demonstration of the erythrocytic ring form trophozoite by Romanowski staining. All right. Any confusion till now? Anything you want to ask?
Sir, please repeat the gross findings.
Gross findings: the carcass may be having icterus. Generally, it is anemic and icterus. Icterus is there. The spleen is enlarged because of the destruction of RBC. Kidneys are swollen, and liver may be swollen and necrotic. Liver may be swollen and necrotic. All right. Anyone else? Okay, just hold on for a minute. Just hold on for a minute. I have to finish some work. In 2 minutes, I'll be back. Okay, just 2 minutes, I will be back. Just hold on, huh? Don't go. Yes. Can you hear me? Connection is all right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Just a second. Hold on. Okay, voice is clear. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, okay, all right. We start with another important disease, coccidiosis. Coccidiosis. The etiology. First of all, you please note down different etiology of the coccidia. Okay. Although this is another very important disease and it will be discussed in very much detail in the parasitology course. Okay. And the different species of coccidia affecting the birds include the Eimeria bruneti, Eimeria, 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 Eimeria. Eimeria is the species of coccidia is a general term we use for them. Okay, and disease is called as coccidiosis, but the species genus is Eimeria genus. Okay, Eimeria genus. So Eimeria bruneti is there, and it affects the lower small intestine. Then Eimeria necatrix, 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 which affects the middle small intestine. Middle small intestine. Then there is Eimeria tenella, Tenella, Eimeria tenella. It affects the ceca, causes cecal coccidiosis, causes cecal coccidiosis. This is most pathogenic coccidia. This is most pathogenic coccidia, and this is the prototype what we will study. This is the prototype coccidia what we will study. All right. Please remember, don't forget Eimeria tenella, cecal coccidiosis by Eimeria tenella. Or it causes parasitic hemorrhagic typhlitis. I'll discuss later on. Okay. The Eimeria acervulina, 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 Eimeria acervulina. It causes it causes the duodenal coccidiosis. Duodenal coccidiosis. It is one of the most prevalent coccidia we see. Duodenal coccidiosis. Then there is Eimeria maxima, which has the largest oocyst. It is called as Eimeria maxima. It affects the middle small intestine. Then Eimeria mitis, mitis, mitis. It affects the lower small intestine. Then Eimeria praecox, Praecox, Eimeria praecox. This also affects the duodenum, but less prevalent. Eimeria praecox also causes the duodenal coccidiosis, but less prevalent. Then there are asymptomatic coccidiosis caused by Eimeria hagani, Hagani, Eimeria hagani, Hagani, and Eimeria mivati, Mivati. The transmission of this disease is ingestion of sporulated oocyst. Oocyst is when the coccidia is dividing in the intestine, it also undergoes schizogony. After schizogony, few rounds of schizogony, they start producing gametes, and these gametes they undergo the syngamy and forms the gametocyte. Forms the zygote. And this zygote gives rise to oocyst. This all aspects will be discussed in parasitology in very much detail. Okay, and this gives rise to oocyst. And this oocyst is the infective form. It is released in the feces. Okay, this schizogony is going on in the intestine. All right, in the chicken coccidiosis, the schizogony occurs in the intestine. It is an intestinal parasite. While coccidia of the rabbit is a liver parasite. Okay, coccidia of rabbit is liver parasite. Okay, here it is intestinal parasite. In cattle, in sheep, in chicken, it is intestinal parasite. Different species are there. All right. Anyways, going ahead. So the uh, during this the gametogony and syngamy, there is formation of oocyst. This oocyst is the infective form. So feco-oral contamination or feco-oral route is the major route of transmission of coccidia. Contamination of the feed, contamination of litter, presence of carrier birds, the fomites, farm workers, use of same litter for multiple birds. All this leads to spread of this disease. Some wild birds are known to spread the oocyst. Mechanical transmission by fomites, farm worker, dust, the boots is very common. Okay. The disease is enteric disease, and the disease is enteric disease, and it causes damage to intestine, malnutrition because of damaged intestine, malnutrition, and in severe cases like Eimeria tenella, severe hemorrhages, which may lead to anemia, So clinical signs in affected birds include the diarrhea, which may be watery to mucoid to hemorrhagic, depending on species. Watery to mucoid to hemorrhagic diarrhea. The bird shows very bad FCR. Birds show very bad FCR. They eat more, but they may not pick up any weight. Feed conversion ratio is very bad. All production parameters come down. Growth, egg production, all production, everything, weight gain, everything comes down. There may be loss of pigmentation from the shank and other pigmented parts, earlobes and shank. The shank and earlobes, if you see a broiler bird, the legs are yellow in color. That yellow color is because of presence of carotenoids and xanthophyll pigmentation. And when the bird is suffering from any nutritional disorder or malnutrition, these carotenes are lost. They are used by the body. So legs become white. That yellowness is gone. As we see in layer birds start utilizing the carotenes for formation of egg yolk, yellow yolk. So in that case, actually, the legs of layer birds, if you see, are grayish. They are not yellow. Okay, especially the laying layer birds. After lay, they again turn yellow. So this is called as loss of pigmentation from the birds, and this is a very characteristic sign of malnutrition and chronic enteric diseases. If farmer is feeding the birds yellow maize, bird is not laying eggs, and its earlobes, its legs are all grayish. That means enteric disease is there, chronic enteric disease is there, malnutrition is taking place. Okay. So there is loss of pigmentation and weight loss, etc. Already I have told you. Then the gross pathological findings. The carcass is anemic. This Eimeria tenella I'll discuss as prototype. Okay, carcass is anemic, poor fat deposition, loss of musculature. There is severe enteritis. In case of very severe cases, ascites may appear. Very rarely. because of hypoproteinemia, ascites may appear. Hypoproteinemia, ascites, and hydropericardium may appear very rarely. And the intestine, especially the affected part appears from the serosal side from the out without opening the intestine. From the outside itself, the intestine appears to have white necrotic spots and black hemorrhagic spots. The intestine from outside appears to have white necrotic spots and black hemorrhagic spots. These are in the mucosa. Necrosis and hemorrhages are occurring in the mucosa because parasites grow in the intestine. So what happens is the appearance is called as salt and pepper appearance. Salt means white, pepper means black. So it appears that intestine is affected by intestine has been sprinkled with salt and pepper. So it gives salt and pepper appearance. Gives salt and pepper appearance. Okay. Some comments on the histopathology I will discuss later on. Some comments on the Eimeria tenella. Eimeria tenella. This is one of the most pathogenic parasite of poultry. Okay, of this chicken. It causes cecal coccidiosis. The pathology of any coccidia depends on how deep it penetrates into the intestinal mucosa for development. The pathology of any coccidia depends on how deep it can penetrate into the intestinal mucosa for development. Okay. Those which remain on the enterocyte level have less effect. They are less virulent, less pathogenic. Those go deeper inside, they are highly pathogenic. Those which go deeper inside, they are highly pathogenic because the more deep they go, the more necrosis they cause, and when they come out, the damage is more severe. And when they come out, damage is more severe. Eimeria tenella can penetrate intestine deepest. Eimeria tenella can penetrate intestine deepest. It can go up to the muscularis mucosa. So the affected intestine shows severe hemorrhages. The ceca shows severe hemorrhages. One comment is here that any coccidia can affect any part of the intestine. All right. But when we say cecal coccidiosis, it is preferred part. Ceca is the preferred part. In severe infection, the Eimeria tenella can go up to duodenum also. Okay, in severe cases from duodenum to cloaca, all the parts it can affect. All right. But preferred site is ceca. Maximum pathology is seen in ceca. So they have their site of predilection. Another comment is the death in the bird. Death in the bird is because of the proliferation of toxigenic bacteria in the intestine. Proliferation of toxigenic bacteria on the necrotic debris, which lead to absorption of poison and death. The death in the bird is because of absorption of poison formed by the growing bacteria on the necrotic debris in the intestine. Okay, because when they did this experiment, coccidiosis experiment, in the specific pathogen-free birds which had no bacteria in the intestine, they only suffered from severe anemia. Very few birds, negligible birds died. Okay, they only showed anemia, but none of the birds died. So but at the same point, naturally kept birds, they started dying as soon as coccidia proliferated. So they found out later on that the bacteria grow on that necrotic and hemorrhagic debris, and this bacteria poisons are absorbed, and these poisons kill the bird. Okay. Anyways, going ahead. So the The affected the Zika, are affected Zika are hemorrhagic, distended with blood and gas. Affected Zika are hemorrhagic, distended with blood and gas. They when opened, they may contain initially frank blood clots. Initially frank blood clots, and in later stages, the birds dying in the later stages, pale necrotic debris. Pale necrotic debris are seen. The serosa in less affected cases appear salt and pepper. In severely affected cases, dark and hemorrhages. Serosa in less affected cases appear salt and pepper, and in severe cases appears dark hemorrhagic. Hmm? Liver may show pale patches. The carcass is overall anemic. Carcass is overall severely anemic. All musculature is pale. All musculature will be pale. Histopathology, the wall of Zika is devoid of epithelium. Wall of Zika is devoid of epithelium. Content is hemorrhagic necrotic. Luminal content is hemorrhagic necrotic. And the developmental stages of coccidia are seen. Present in the intestine. Diagnosis of coccidiosis is by fecal examination. Hmm, in dead birds, intestinal scraping, mucosal scraping. We call that mucosal scraping. Underline this, remember this. Mucosal scraping shows the presence of coccidia. Then histopathology, coccidia can be demonstrated by PAS, periodic acid shift, especially the oocyst. Development stages may not appear, but oocysts do appear. Histopathology by PAS, especially the oocyst. Then species identification by culture, and PCR. Species identification by culture and PCR. The next disease what we discuss is histomoniasis. Acha, any doubt in coccidiosis? Yes? Anything you want to ask? No? Okay, next disease is histomoniasis. Or can you hear me or not? Voice is clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. Histomoniasis, also called as black head disease of Turkey. The protozoa causing this disease is Histomonas meleagritis. MELEAGRIDIS. Histomonas meleagritis. Meleagritis means Turkey. This is black head disease of Turkey. Chicken is also affected. Definitely chicken is also affected. But most susceptible species are turkeys. We will see later on. The intermediate host is Heterachis gallinarum. Is a worm called as Heterachis gallinarum. It's cecal worm of the chicken and turkeys. Heterachis gallinarum, cecal worm of the chicken and turkey. This is not obligatory intermediate host, but it is very important in spread of the histomonads. Okay, it is very important in the spread of histomonads. The histomonads remain inside the eggs of Heterachis gallinarum. In that eggs, they survive for very long time. Histomonads survive for very long time. very long time. Remember this, Heterakis gallinarum, eggs, cecal worm of poultry birds. Inside the eggs, it remains for a very long time. And when the bird consumes the eggs of Heterakis, the not only it gets the infection by Heterakis, also infection with the Histomonas meliacritis. Further, the eggs of Heterakis are also carried by earthworm. Earthworm eat up the eggs and they travel here and there. These earthworms are picked up by the birds. They eat the earthworm. With the earthworm, they get the Heterakis infection, and with the Heterakis infection, they get the Histomonas infection. Is it clear? Any confusion in this point?
Sir, please repeat it.
The Heterakis gallinarum is cecal worm of poultry birds. It carries the histomonads inside the eggs. These eggs of Heterakis are consumed by the earthworm, which are feeding on the dead decaying matter, earthworm, and these earthworm move here. And how this disease is spread? How this disease is spread? The earthworm move here and there. They are picked up by the bird. Birds eat them. Chicken, poultry, turkey, birds will eat the earthworm. From this earthworm, they will get the infection of Heterakis, and with the Heterakis, also infection of Histomonas meliacritis. All right.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
However, apart from all this story, Histomonas can be spread by direct contact. There is no need of the Heterakis or earthworm. They can be spread by direct contact. There is no need of Heterakis eggs, and there is no need of earthworm. But earthworm and the eggs, they increase the range of spread. Heterakis eggs increase the time of survival of Histomonas, and earthworm take it to a larger distance for spread. All right, they are important for the area of spread and epidemiology. But they can be, Histomonas can be very easily spread by direct contact with the droppings of affected birds, affected turkey or chicken. All right. One important part is that during the infection, the acidity in crop kills most of the Histomonas. So inside the egg, they survive not only the crop but also the proventriculus. They easily survive the crop and proventriculus. All right. Okay. Once again, we see the pathology of this disease. The clinical signs include the yellow feces. Yellow feces, they are called as sulfur-colored droppings. Sulfur-colored droppings. What is this sulfur-colored dropping? Sulfur-colored droppings are actually the urates from kidney which contain lot of bile pigment. These sulfur-colored droppings are not feces. They are urates from kidney which are containing lot of the bile pigment. That's why they are called as yellow sulfur-colored droppings. Okay. Please underline this. The blackhead disease of turkey is characterized by yellow sulfur-colored droppings, which are urates containing the bile pigments. The affected bird is weak, drowsy, droopy. Droopy means hanging head and wings. The affected bird is drowsy, droopy with hanging head and wings. There is anorexia. And some birds show cyanosis of head, also called blackhead, especially turkeys. Some birds show cyanosis of head, especially black. The turkey, also called as blackhead. I forgot to mention the host range. Host are basically the turkey, all age group. All age group are susceptible, and chicken between 4 to 6 months old chicken are also susceptible to the infection of Histomonas. chicken, especially 4 to 6 weeks of the layer, right? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, okay. Oh. Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, all right. Uh, in uh, in later stages of this
Can you please
disease,
tell
the
from the
bird
host range?
host range once again. Chicken 4 to 6 weeks of age, especially the broiler 4 to 6 week of age, and some layer birds also, young layer birds, but generally broilers, and turkeys of all age. Turkey is most susceptible. This is basically disease of turkeys. Okay. Then in turkeys, mortality can be 80 to 100%. Turkey's mortality can be 80 to 100%. In chicken, it is variable and from less to up to 70%, from very low to 70%, variable mortality. Okay. The gross findings are seen in the ceca which are thickened, hyperemic, and contain serous to hemorrhagic exudate. The gross finding, the ceca contains the serous to hemorrhagic exudate, and wall may be thick and hyperemic. In later stages, the caseous cheesy material is seen in ceca. Caseous cheesy necrotic material is seen in ceca later stages. Caseous cheesy material in the ceca. The walls of the ceca and intestine, the walls of ceca and other affected intestine show ulcerations and sometimes perforations. Ulcers are so deep that intestine shows holes or perforations. They show ulcerations and necrotic area, very typical necrotic area. Liver shows very typical necrotic area. Underline this, remember this, don't forget this. The liver shows very typical necrotic area where the necrotic area is circular in shape. Necrotic area is circular in shape, about 1 centimeter in diameter, and raised margins. Raised margin. This is very characteristic but not common. Not commonly seen. Sometimes called as liver ulcer, but it is wrong. Ulcers do not form in liver. Okay, sometimes called as liver ulcers, but it is not an ulcer. So it's a circular with raised margin and the central necrotic core almost 1 centimeter in diameter. This recovers with scarring. If bird survives, it recovers with scarring. Liver is overall enlarged, discolored, greenish or tan. Liver is overall enlarged, discolored, greenish or tan. The lungs, kidney, spleen, and mesentery may show presence of necrosis. Lungs, kidney, and spleen may show presence of necrosis. Histopathology. The ceca shows hyperemia, hydrophil. The ceca shows hyperemia and hydrophil infiltration. Histomonas are seen as ovoid bodies in lamina propria up to muscularis. The cecal core contains necrotic debris. The cecal wall may show coagulative necrosis and also presence of giant cells. This is foreign body giant cell. It is not Langhans giant cell. All right. The liver, affected part of liver, shows presence of heterophil, lymphocytes, and monocytes. Heterophils, monocytes, and lymphocytes. And the necrotic lesion, surrounding of necrotic lesion contains histomonas. The periphery of necrotic region, that liver ulcer, that is not ulcer, true ulcer, but called as ulcer. Okay, so simply call it liver necrosis. The periphery of that circular liver necrosis contains histomonas. Okay, diagnosis by the microscopic identification of histomonas. Microscopic identification of histomonas, the presence of cecal worms, the gross pathology, histopathology. In histopathology, they can be demonstrated in HND and PAS. In histopathology, they can be demonstrated by HND and PAS. Also use of PCR. Also use of PCR can be helpful. All right. So use of PCR can be helpful. All right. So we conclude the parasitic diseases. Then we will start with fungal diseases. Later we will start with the excuse me, fungal diseases, and after that some metabolic disease will be remaining. Fungal disease, some enlistment of the